For the first section of the Autumn Cottage workshop, we are going to put together the layouts from the project booklet. So if you purchased the Autumn Cottage Buy It All bundle, you got the project booklet, and our layouts are going to originate from here. If you notice in the booklet, there is a cutting guide that uses some of the designer paper, vellum, and cardstock, not included in the bundle. And then there are 7 projects. We are going to focus today on the 12 by 12 layout. So there are 4 of those. They were put in the project guide as 1-pagers, and we're going to turn them into 2. So we are going to focus on project number 1, project number 2, project number 3. We are going to skip the borders in the card and then do project number 7. So we are going to double our cuts. For most of these, to turn them into a 2-page layout, with the exception of project number 3. It has this large jumbo circle, and we're just going to create a companion page. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So as we go through the cut guide, you will want to have your booklet as reference. You can make notes. I made notes on mine. I went through and marked which letter goes with which layout number, so I knew which pieces were border pieces and card pieces. It just helps to kind of think ahead and make sure I'm kind of oriented to what each project uses. In this project booklet, she does use cardstock not included in the kit. She uses tangerine, dark sea green, and bright white. I am not going to, I'm not confident I'm going to use these mats. Probably will cut the dark sea green and the tangerine. I don't love tangerine. I'll probably swap out the color. Anyways, we'll talk about photos. We'll talk about mats and matte colors. These are the colors you'll see in the booklet. To be determined what I end up using. So back to the cut guide. Let's go through and pull out our paper so we know. And like I said, we're going to have to double some of these sheets. So paper number 1 is abstract orange out of the prints. The back side of it is the leaves. We are using both prints, so we will need both pieces of these papers. So we're not going to be able to double paper number 1. So we might have to sub in some cardstock or something for the other side. We'll figure that out when we actually work on that layout number 1. And then number 2 are the leaves. Number 3 is the knit blanket, but that piece is just for a border, so we're going to skip that one. And then piece number 4 is abstract teal. Piece number 5 is cable knit. All of this is used for the border in the card, so we can skip that one for now. And then we need the sheet of wood grain, the sheet of pumpkins, and the rest of these are vellum. So keep the extra paper to the side. We'll probably come back and use some of it. For the vellum, it looks like we're using 1 sheet of each, and it only comes with 1 sheet of each. So we'll have tangerine, yellow, red, green, and island waters. So keep all of those. You can get rid of the cardboard and the cover sheet. So I have my stack of paper ready to go, and I'll need my 12-inch trimmer. And the sheet of abstract orange. So this is an 8-inch square. If we look forward, though, let's look at what she's doing with paper number 2. The leaves is 5 by 8. So let's flip over to this layout. So layout number 1, we have this 8-inch square, and then we have this 5x8 strip. Because this is 5 inches, it keeps me from using the same sheet of paper. So if we reduce the size of piece B to 4x8, we can actually use our second piece of paper to replicate the 8-inch square also. So let's do that. So on your cut guide, just make a note that this is going to be 4x8, piece number B. And that means we can use part of what we already just cut. You can see by this gray shading, she's not using any of that in the rest of the layout. So this is 4x8. Actually, so we can just, this piece is already cut. This can be our piece B. And then we have this whole extra sheet too that we'll keep to the side. We might layer it in to the layout. So now that I reduce the size of that cut, I can replicate this and do the same thing with this sheet. So I need an 8-inch square. That will give me 4 inches at the bottom, and that gives me 2 pieces of B. And then we're skipping the knit blanket because that was a border piece, and we're going to our abstract peels. And we need 2 1-inch strips. These pieces F, G, and H are all card pieces, so we're going to skip those for now. So I just need 2 1-inch pieces. Piece number 5, we're skipping. All of those were for the border and the card, and then we're going to go to the wood grain. We're going to cut across the grain, and I need 3 1-inch pieces. As we move forward, I'm going to have to remind myself, you guys will have to remind me too, I'm supposed to be doubling these, so I'm going to have to go back to that teal. So I need actually 6 of these because we're doubling this. That should be 6 wood grain pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 3, 4, 5. I need 1 more. That doesn't make sense though because I have 6 inches left. I think there's 1. Things are stuck together. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so you still have 6 inches left for your save pile. Let me go back and pull my abstract peel because I need 2 more of these, for a total of 4. And then we're on to piece number 7. This 2-inch piece on the side goes with the border. So all we need out of the pumpkins is the circle. We'll come back to the circle. Let's get the rest of our trimmer pieces done. Then we have the vellum. So on the vellum, the first 2-inch piece is a border. So I just need the 1-inch pieces, and I need 4 of those. And this is a tangerine. So there is yellow, tangerine, and red. So double check your colors. So since I'm doubling this, I want 4 pieces. I'm going to flip my mat. cut looks a little jagged. So whenever your cut starts to look a little jagged and vellum is thicker, yeah, that's a much smoother edge. Time to flip your mat if you get a jagged cut. Oh, I didn't quite get the bottom. Use my scissors. I want 4 of these total. So 1, 2, 3, that's 4. We're going to need to cut some circles. We'll come back to those. Then I need the yellow. So I want to double this. So I want 4 pieces. Why am I missing the bottom? You gotta pay more attention. Probably because I have my trimmer on the cutting mat. You really want your trimmer to be level? Jeez, maybe I should just pull out my cutting mat. My table's not always that level either. I'm just missing that very end, which is odd because I do not usually have trouble with paper. I wonder why the vellum's different. Okay, so that's 3. 1 more. Probably if I start at the bottom, it'll get me the clean cut. So that's 4 pieces. Same with the red. 4 pieces, 1-inch pieces. Maybe I just not pushing hard enough. Like I said, I don't usually work with vellum. It is. Let's start over with that piece. I'm gonna clean up my edge. I do need a firm cut to get through this. A little thicker than our paper. Let's do 3. 4. The green, we also want 4 1-inch strips. Somebody labeling my mat too. Three, 4. And the last piece for Island Waters, it just uses 1, so we just want 2. That's all of our straight cuts, unless you're going to cut your mats. I'll come back to the mats. I think it would be better to compare the colors to the layout before I decide. So tangerine is for 1, dark sea green they're using for 2 and 3. So we'll come back around to those. So let's work on the circles. So if we go backwards to our small ones, now we're using the tangerine vellum and the yellow vellum. For the tangerine vellum, we're using the smallest circle with the red blade on the outside. So it's a 4-inch circle for those of you that cut differently than the custom cutting system. Outside red blade. I'm trying to have a firm, like I said, I do not usually cut vellum. That looks like I got it the first time. Need to double this, so I need another one. I don't think I'm going to squeeze it on that side, so I'll come down here. And then for that piece W, I want the largest circle, so number 3. Inside with the blue blade. Two of these. Leaves us with yellow. We're going back to the small circle, the inside of the 4-inch. So the outside with the red blade. Yeah, I thought it was off just a little bit. So if you get off just a little bit, just use your scissors to give it a little clean up. And we need to repeat that. We need one more on the side blade. If your blades are old, this is probably when you're going to be able to tell. Like I said, the vellum does cut thicker. It is. You do want to make sure. I don't actually have a very even desk. I need to replace this. And make sure you get a firm pressure to get that all the way around. And that leads us back with the pumpkin paper. I don't think our orientation matters now that we're not cutting the border piece. So this is a jumbo. Inside with the blue blade. And we're using the back side of it. When we do the companion page, I was thinking that we could use the frame of this for the companion page. So I would orient the pumpkins as you would look at them. I don't know if we'll use the pumpkin side or the orange side, tangerine side, but it will give us the option. And then we're just going to center the best we can in the middle of this layout. If you really want to get particular, you can, grab your 0 ruler, make sure, you can kind of check top and bottom. I don't know, I can like pull out every other ruler except the 0. Way down. To pull out your 0 ruler, you can line it up with the half marks, the 6-inch marks on the side. And then you're just looking here at the outside to see if you are about the same measurement. About 1/2 inch or so to each side. Looks like I'm pretty good. We're going on the inside with the blue blade. And that gives us this frame we can use on the flip side of the layout if we want to. So that is all of the cutting that we have to do. So now we can put together the layouts. We're going to start with layout number 1, which is actually not the Dumbo circle. You might have to pause for a second and get some of your stuff out of the way. Use 2 mats, line them up. So we're going to line up these pieces. So she is using, she, or refer to she, Brenda Rose, who is another Creative Memory Advisors, created this project booklet for us, these lovely layouts. And she uses bright white cardstock for the base. So I'm going to pull out the other pieces and then we're going to talk about choosing a base color piece. So I remember from the beginning, we cut those 8-inch pieces and the 4-inch pieces. So those are the pieces that we're pulling out. Well, you're using 4-inch, not 5, so they are slightly smaller. Let's talk about the base papers. Pulled out cardstock. So the top here is bright white. And I don't know how well you can tell on camera. I don't want to screw up you can see how bright this is, and you can tell that this, which is our normal white, has a little bit of creaminess to it. That was actually one of the complaints about the white, which is why they came out with the bright white. To be perfectly honest, I think the original white with that creaminess is a better match for this layout. I feel like the bright white is a little too stark for these warm tones. Can you see the difference? I feel like this, you can see the creaminess, but it just complements the color palette. So if you do want to use white, I would suggest using the regular white, not the bright white, unless you really do prefer kind of that stark contrast. I'm actually going to use Wild Oats. It's a paper cardstock from my stash. You can go through these and pick out any neutral, something kind of light would offer some brightness to your layouts, but you could also go with more of a brown or dark color if you like those also. So my suggestions, bright white is what you're going to see in the booklet. Regular white, it would be my recommendation if you want to go with something that is currently available, or you can go through your stash and find something like I'm using Wild Oats for all of these base papers. If you work directly on the page, you obviously just saw what white looked like, but Spargo or tan would work well also. because you're going to see quite a bit of it popping through with these fall colors. She does show an optional use of splatter with the shimmer pens. I am not confident in that technique. I've never tried it, so I'm not going to show that here with you today. We are using regular paper, so you can just use regular tape. You don't need a special vellum tape. If you have repo tape, whatever it is that you want to use is fine. So let's go through. She's piecing together the left side. So we're adhering piece A, which is our large piece, 1 inch from the left and 2 inches from the bottom. It's going to sit about right there. Use your 13 by 13 ruler or some other mat. 13 by 13 mat, I mean, or a ruler. To line up your pieces. We can also then do the opposite over here. You have your base paper lined up on your mat, and we're going to adhere these 1 inch from the right and 2 inches from the bottom. We are using the, show the right color. I want to tell you wrong. Yeah, the tangerine circles. One for each side. I'm not going to adhere these yet. I'm going to see how the layout. So that's piece W is the smaller circle. For piece B, which is the leaves, she's orienting it 1 inch from the right edge. And she's talking about this one, 4 inches from the bottom. So 4 inches is going to be kind of low. Remember, we lost a whole inch of this. I'm going to suggest moving it up. So 5 inches from the bottom, 1 inch from the right. And that is going to sit these here. Why do I want to orient it up? I think our photos will tend to be towards the bottom, or you have the border down here. I just want to fill more space higher up. So 1 inch from the inside of the layout. And that's going to be 3 inches from the top. Opposite on the mirror image, we're going from the inside edge, 1 inch from the inside edge, 5 inches from the bottom, or 3 inches from the top. Now she has the smaller circles up here, and then we have our larger circles tucked into this corner, the inside corner. And then she has the photo mats here and here. So let's talk about the photo mat color. Pulled out a whole variety of colors. Here's tangerine. They use in layouts. I still think it's too bright. It is, as you all know, it is not my favorite color. Pumpkin, which is a little darker in the orange. Bronze shimmer would just change it, or, kind of go away from the orange, but bronze shimmer would be pretty. Orange shimmer, I actually think it's a better match than pumpkin or tangerine. And there's gold shimmer, which would really brighten it up. So of all of these colors, does tangerine work? Yeah. And in the end, you're not going to see a lot of it once you have your photos on there. I'm kind of torn whether I should try to use some of it up, or we could use orange shimmer, which I like better over. I did in tangerine. I was like, want to have just a little tiny border. And I can do that actually, to use it up a little bit. They're using 4-inch squares, and then you're trimming your photo down a little less than 4 inches. I'm gonna cut the 4-inch out of orange shimmer. Well, on the cut guide, we're basically going back to cut the tangerine, those two 4-inch matte pieces. I'm gonna need to double this, but I can get 3 out of one 4-inch strip. Let's see how they fit. Maybe I have room to do a little tangerine pop with the mat. I could cut 4 1/4 squares. And that will give me just a little pop of the tangerine, which is nice, and it uses it up. So let's do that. 4 1/4 squares. A double layered mat. I think my beef with tangerine is I feel like it gets used in the wrong context. They treat it as an orange. I'm not saying it doesn't have orange tone in it, but I feel like it has a brightness to it that belongs perhaps with maybe a little bit more of a beachy vibe than how it's usually used. I'm creating a double photo mat. So when I get my photos, I'm going to trim them down a little less than 4 inches. My tape got a little excited. I think these are old refills I'm using up. A little bit sticky. I trimmed all my nails down this week, and I'm struggling to pick anything up. Now that we have our mats, we can decide where we want the mats to orient, and then we can make a final decision on the vellum. These mats will center nicely about a little less than a 1/4 inch from the edge, and then I'm looking at the same border there. So let's go ahead and adhere this one down. But adhere this one and just not put tape over here. So I'm going to focus my tape over here. So I can tuck that circle up underneath there. Okay, true confession, guys. I've never actually used vellum tape runner, maybe once ever. For pieces that hide under here, you could use regular tape, but see how the vellum comes out. I've heard that if it comes out straight, it's okay, but if it starts to bunt at all, then you see it. This is a test. I'm going to tuck it up under here. Orienting so the edge of the circle kind of comes out from around underneath this corner, and then I can still see that corner. Because of the texture and the vellum, I think it'll help hide any tape. I can't see it, so that's good. I'm going to decide where to adhere this little guy up here. It looks like about 2 inches from the edge and about 3/4 down from the top. And again, I could mostly put the tape, any kind of tape, underneath. It's going to hide under here. I said 2 inches. I'll replicate that over here on this side. And I got my back on my mat. I did put some tape down that corner. I'm just not going to push that corner down. Let me shift this over slightly. My vellum tape runner on. And then slide that up underneath. And I need to adhere this piece. About 2 inches. It gives me the base layout. So on this layout, suggest using one of the borders. Extra tangerine to the side. It's the border with the fence. This is where the challenge is going to come in. If you bought 2 sets of borders, then you'll be fine. If you did not, the borders are sold out. So I can't get another one of these to duplicate to the other side. And you could push your photos up too. I kept my mats kind of pushed down a little bit more than the project guide shows, because then I can still put some photos up here, have a little bit more space for it. Also show using this grateful format, which could tuck in or you could trim down a little bit. Depends how many photos you end up having. If you have a lot of journaling and just a couple photos, you could do a photo here and your photos there. But then there's a dilemma of the border. So what do we do with the border when we only have one and we have a 2-page layout? We could always cut it and have partial on one side or the other. If we could orient it differently if you wanted. You could move it up. This is really kind of depends on how many photos you have. I mean, it would be really cute to cut it in half and have it up here as more of an accent, but you've limited your photo space up here. You just have the two 4x4s down here, maybe something small here. You could always journal here. The bottom, if we cut it, we'd need to overlap a little bit. It's gonna look a little awkward if it's just kind of like hovering here with no space. The other option is you save it for something else and you punch like the rustic fence border maker to trim along the bottom and layer in something else. Or we could also go back and add in a little bit more paper. So we do have extra paper. Remember these sheets here to the side? The back side of this are leaves. And so we could come in here, you could cut, this is 4 inches, yeah, it's 4 inches, and we are 2 inches off the bottom. So you could cut a 2-inch strip and layer it up underneath here, or you could cut something a little bit thinner if you wanted to fill in some of this space. I'm going to cut it in half because 2 inches is easy. I think my 4 inches was generous, so I'm actually going to trim this down just slightly. I could tell that 2 inches was a little bit different. You could add in another strip here. We could also cut it down a little bit too. Whatever leftovers I have, I'm going to try to create additional layouts. So I still have this 4 inches I can use on something else. So this is where I kind of stop and think like, okay, do I need this much of the print at the bottom to add some interest, or would I be okay with half of it? If I used half of it, I could just tuck in a 1-inch strip kind of underneath there, which would be pretty. Do I want to punt the border, keep the border at the bottom? I think the border would be pretty cut in half. If you don't have a lot of photos, I would probably sit it up here. And I would trim it probably like just give myself some space with the leaves. So that would be about a little over 5, about 5 1/4. This isn't layered. That end's not layered. Actually, I don't. I was going to try to trim it in here, but I'm going to go up a little higher so it cuts better. So this is 5 1/4. I have these 2 border pieces that could layer down here like this. And one of the tickets is when you are layering, just kind of have to be careful with what you're layering. Does it look like a gap? Does it look okay? That is kind of my silence and debate is what I think about this fence line. I can either push this all the way down. I like it kind of layered up a little higher, but then the pickets are going to overlap the photos, which might be fine. I'm wondering what this would look like. Like, what if we just used 1 inch up here? It's going to be, if I did 1 inch, cut in half to save some of the paper. You're just going to kind of see that a little bit along there. Or do I keep it up here? This would probably be easier if the border set had 2 of each border, or they weren't sold out, because then I could just tell you to buy another set, except it wouldn't be a mirror image border. Okay, for the interest of saving paper for later, let's cut one of these in half. I think it's safe to say at this point you could do what you want, depends on what you want to have left over for later. I have 2 1-inch strips. I would chuck it just a little bit. So I'm going to adhere it about 1 1/4 from the bottom. You can choose, just depending on the photos you have. Do you want to put photos up here? I would just layer these border pieces around, depending on your photos. You could push your photos up a little higher if you wanted. You could alternate the fence sections, or you could leave the fence off completely and just decorate differently, or you could use half a fence. Whatever works well for you. If you wanted to maintain a fence on both sides, I would put rustic fence and put it down there along the bottom. And then I could maybe just use half of it here. So I could have a photo here, journaling here, a little bit of the fence there, and kind of leave it at that. So that is layout project number 1. Project number 2, again, choose your base papers. We created a version of this at my retreat, and because it was a make and take, people chose their paper. So these are a little bit different, but you can see this base paper is Autumn Haze Shimmer. Autumn Haze Shimmer was pretty thick, so it worked well as a base. And it kind of had a creamy design to it also. And here's, we did punch some rustic fins and a rustic truck in the gourd punch. So this layout is the one I lifted to create my make and take. And we're going to need those printed strips. So we're going to have a blue and a plaid from each one. And then the wood grain one's kind of hiding on my wood grain desk. We're going to have a wood grain up, and then we'll have the brown design on each side. So those are our pieces. Oh, I think we forgot to cut. Oh, yeah, we did. I missed one. The green vellum down here. So it's a 4-inch out of green. We would want 2 of those. So we'll come back to that. You could also change it up. This doesn't show a lot of green in the prints. You could also use brown shimmer. That's what I used in my make and take option. And we're going to orient these 2 inches from the edge. So just choose an edge and start. You can also turn your paper if it helps you go horizontally. You can use repo tape if you're not confident you'll get them on there straight the first time. Plaid goes down the middle. And finish up on with the brown flowerish design. We're going to do a mirror image over here. This is the way this is lined up. So I'm going to turn it around like this and double check myself. I want to drop 2 inches from this edge. So it's about right here. And this is a little awkward for me. So I'm going to actually flip it back around. That here, so I have a little bit more space on camera. And I'm going 2 inches from this left edge because I'm going to turn it 180 degrees when I'm done. Handed might work for you to do this the other way. There's my mirror image. So now I can think about those circles. We use green. So the benefit of green is if your photos have green, you want to bring in green, but there's not really a whole lot of green in these colors. I could pull in brown shimmer like I did on my make and take, and it's really going to pop. It really pops this design. So I'm going to cut my circles with brown shimmer. So with a 4-inch circle, so it's the smallest circle with the red blade on the outside. Cut these in half. I'm going to set it up here in my trimmer. It's okay if they're not perfect. We're going to tuck them in. I know you can't see it very well on camera, but the brown trimmer really was one of my favorites with this collection. It really adds a dimension to a pop. And then we're just tucking these in on each side. And you could adhere these now. You could just tuck them in now. It can really depend on where you put your photos, how you want to layer them. You know, do you want it down here because you have photos up here? Do you kind of want to go opposite on your layouts? Do you want them in the middle, depending on your photos? Or a true mirror image? Up to you. But if you just tuck these kind of in behind your strips, they'll stay there. And then when you actually put photos on your pages, you can decide for sure where you want to have them on there. The rest of the embellishment that is shown on the project guide, your stickers, you can also punch with the gourd punch for these. I'll show you my examples again. These are from Golden Harvest embellishments, the oak tree, the gourd punch. These are all shimmer papers, bronze, brown, parakeet, orange, and gold, and they really complement the brown shimmer nicely. A little piece of the rustic track. So definitely some cute options depending on where you put your photos. So that is project number 2. Project number 3. This one's going to stretch our brain a little bit, and then we'll finish it up the first round here with project number 7, which is pretty basic also. Grab your base papers. We might change up the right side, but let's see how it looks first. So you're going to need your jumbo circle. And the frame. On the project guide, you're going to notice really the only pieces cut are the circle, and then she shows 2 dark sea green mats because the rest of it is layering with the borders. I mean, the borders are gorgeous. She has the camping one, the tree one, and the mountains. And then a little bit of the trees cut up here. So it's a gorgeous layered fall effect. But you don't need 2 pages of this, even if we had double. It's nice just to kind of have a focus. You can leave the mountains out if you don't have mountains where your fall is. I do not have mountains where my fall is here in Indiana. It could be pretty just with the 2. I could save that border for maybe my Colorado trip. I haven't scrapbooked yet. And then I could push the circle down a little bit to tuck it behind there. To replicate this side, you could use the pumpkins. I would probably suggest sticking with the textured paper. It's going to give us the circle in the middle, which is going to look a little awkward. And so there's a couple things you could do with this piece. You could trim it and push it over here to the side. You could have room for 4x4s here. You could also put a different base paper behind it. And maybe you want to pull out some of the green or the dark sea green. You can see the dark sea green does complement the orange as it pulls out of the border. And it's going to darken it down a little bit. Let me show you what dark green looks like. So this is dark green. It has some scraps here. It would be really pretty too for mats if you don't want to go into the blues as much as dark sea green is. So you might be thinking, what does this look like? And if I keep the dark sea green behind it, because in the end I'm not going to see a lot of it, and I could use green mats. In the end, we're just going to see a little bit of the circle that peeks through. Let's play with this a little bit. I need to clean up my dark green cardstock. I have about, let's see, 8.5 here. This is just scrap, but actually that works out perfectly because I could cut some 4 1/4 mats by 6 1/4. This one's going to be a little shorter, but inevitably there's usually a photo I have that I can cut down to like 5 inches. So this is going to be 6 1/4 and 5 3/4. Actually, you could do 5.5, 4 by 5.5. Or whatever cardstock you have, you can cut your mats to size. But she's stuck in her photos in the borders. I left out the mountain borders because I'm not gonna have mountains here in my fall photos. Maybe I don't want to tuck the photos. I could just kind of leave them up. It depends on your tolerance for crooked or not. She's tilting one of hers. But something like that would be nice for a couple photos. And then over here, maybe you don't like that dark sea green. Maybe it's just too much popping out. You want to cover it with more mats. Okay, go back to my neutral base underneath. You could probably even cover it completely in the middle. I mean, if you really don't like that circle coming through, um, you could cut just a big mat out of cardstock. But you see, even if I do this and just peek a little circle out of the side, it adds a little dimension, a little layering, and kind of replicates the mood over here. So I would suggest something like this. Maybe keep your base neutral. You can either use a dark sea green or dark green, and then just let maybe half of the circle show through. She is also using one of those border stickers. You almost can't see it on her layout. It's the thankful, grateful, blessed. Below, oh, it's way down here. It's the very bottom of the layout. It's really hard to see. And it's just this strip. So I would, if you want to use that on this layout, I would cut it at some point like we did the other one. And you can maybe just layer it around some of your mats. So your photos, because we cut a 12-inch piece, you could maybe lose that grateful word in the middle, and then you could cut one that ends with thankful and thankful, and then the side could be blessed and thankful. And then we could adhere it. You could also go between the photos if you wanted to. So let's adhere down what we've decided so far. This one you could really get into the weeds of decorating. We're not going to do our final decorating until we're done with all of even the add-on layouts. We kind of got to see what's left. I am adhering this onto the cardstock. Depending on the cardstock that you choose, you may see cardstock is a little bit bigger or smaller than your paper. You could also just cut a square for the back. You don't have to use a full 12-inch sheet. I'm going to orient this border a 1/4 inch off the bottom. Going to let a little bit of my cardstock peek through. It's also peeking through over there, so it's continuity of a design element. I'm going to tuck this tree border just enough underneath it that it layers. And then my circle, I'm going to adhere. You can choose how you want it to be kind of stuck under there. And then you could just also raise it up. You don't want to retuck it. And adhere it down a little bit off the edge still. These are both the smaller mats. If you want to have, your 2 mats here layered. Put them in there somewhere. We do also have the truck border, which you could pull over here. On her layout here, she's using it above one of the photos, like the vertical photos, which is adorable. If you want to stretch it out between the layouts, though, too, you could pull it over here. You could adhere it maybe about 1/2 inch or so. Depends on how much you want it to overlap the mats. If your photo, can you cover up some of the bottom of your photo? Or you could push it down a little bit and push your mats up a little bit. I'm going to go at 1/2 inch. And then tuck my mats down a little bit. I'm going to assume I can trim some of my photos. I'm actually more worried this did not stick. I'm more worried that I'm going to have vertical photos, not horizontal. Okay, you know what would help if you actually adhesive on the border. I'm like, why isn't it sticking? There's no tape on it. My gosh. Okay, so there's my border. I can check these this mat down here. And then I layer this one on top of it. If I have more dark green, I can cut more mats to put over here. Make sure it's all here. Yeah. I'm not going to tilt my mat and I'm not going to tuck it. I'm going to keep it up here. Since I did take out that mountain border, keep cover up a little bit more of the space. So I like that. I think it's a nice companion page. Since each other, it doesn't look like I'm trying to match, but it keeps all the elements spread out. And then I still have the sticker that I could adhere when I'm ready to do my final accent. So that's project number 3. So our final layout for this first section of the class is the back layout number 7. This is all going to be vellum. We're just layering the colors. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 8 pieces per side. See, again, she uses bright white. I'm still using wild oats. I would suggest regular white or autumn haze shimmer or something. You are going to need to use a 13 by 13 mat or a ruler or a T-ruler or something to help you keep all of these strips straight. And then we can start on one side or the other with our vellum tape runner, 1 inch from the bottom, and work our way. If you cut crooked, this is where it's going to show up. You don't want to layer them because it's going to change the color of the vellum, but just try to stack them. If you have a little bit of variance, you can just roll with it. You can hide a lot with photos or stickers or adhesives, or else when everything else is on the layout, it just does, you just don't notice it as much. You can already see I have a little bit of variance. This side's not up to the 7. A lot of strips. You can see I'm a little off here. I could try once to see if I can straighten it up. If not, it's just gonna live like that. I'm not pulling all these. Do my best to kind of adhere it down the middle. Then you can do the other side. Already on. You can tell here something's crooked. My cat probably more than my. But it's okay. Those layered together, actually, you can't tell too much. Overlap, I should say. You have to overlap slightly, trying to keep it straight. I did not pull out a vellum refill. Hopefully I get through all of these. I think this one got cut a little bit good. I think it's a little thinner at the edge. I might flip it so at least if there's a thinner part, it's on the outside. I feel like sometimes outside the layout, you don't notice as much. It's vellum. I don't usually love vellum. You used a dark base paper. You were going to change the way the paper looks through it. I've darkened it slightly just by using a creamy. If you use a bright white, it's probably going to be a little bit brighter vellum, but so stick with a neutral for sure. So there's our two base papers. And then for the mats, they chose the brown plaid. The back side is this wood speckle, and then the yellow. Obviously, we don't have two sets, so what they did is cut down these to fit on there. And we also have the pumpkins. They cut the pumpkins out of the journal box. And then they cut these little circles out, which are really cute, kind of spread apart. And then fall day details, and then a few tags. We do have some extra paper. I say want to make other layouts out of it, but if you remember this sheet was for the cards. We also have these pieces that I cut that actually were for the cards, so these should have been green, but now I have them extra. They could go on this layout, kind of complement the small ovals too. So my point is with this paper, instead of using these mats, you could also cut paper, but that doesn't give you two brown sets. The flip side of this also is this beautiful leaf paper, leaf trees, which would be fun to use on here also. Usually what I do, I spread apart the brown, you could use one on each side. I actually like the back side of this better, kind of that color goes better with the check in a circle. I probably won't fussy cut out the pumpkins. I feel like I could have a similar effect with the gourd. But let's see about cutting out these. These are tiny. Might try to use like the green blade. I don't think I have the green blade out though, because it wasn't on the original. We're gonna try blue. I think blue is gonna be, let me look, too much. I might actually need to use the red. I think I should probably use red. So it's a tiny little cut inside, but it is perfect. If you want the rim around it, which is going to pop it out, or else I need to find a green blade. I have an old one. Close that hand. See what green looks like. Green works too. It's going to be a center bit of, and the blue is going to cut into the color. I should be able to get edge ones too with green. A little off center, but it's okay. That's gonna be cutting close down here. I'm gonna try the blue. I'm gonna cut into the color, but I don't think I have an option. Otherwise, yeah, it's a little tight. But I could layer it and you'd never know. So I wouldn't recommend blue. It's a little too small. If you use green and your cuts get too close to cut each other, which I managed to do that, you could always, I saved it between the two. You could just layer them, overlap it. I don't need all of them. So to put my layout together, this looks awkward because I would want a photo right there. And I can decide if I want to use all the mats. Do I want to use any of this? I actually think I want to use some of the leaf color. It would really pop in. I could do maybe like a large mat. It is hard for me to do this without photos. You could choose one color per side, or you could, do one of each if you want the brown and the yellow on each side. The circles I would just tuck. You could do like, I do want to leave space for little medallions, if you will. Vellum would be nice too for a photo or a journal box. I'm going to assume I'm going to journal in one of those, and I would cut journaling to matte. Let's see how the vellum looks. I don't know what you guys think. I could leave it. This does work in nicely. You could also use this as a photo mat, if you wanted to skip out maybe on these and bring in some color with matte. Four and a half inch. Let's do that. Let's do 4.5 inch. I mean 6.5. 6.5 wide. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to do 4.5 and 4.5. Let me put a placeholder mat there so it doesn't look so obvious. You could also use like one of that. It's a little bit different. No. Or I could put, actually, I should put pumpkins there as a placeholder. Or even the fall day. That's what she cut out to layer the photo. I'll leave that one there. How about that? When you put my photos in here, I would choose something real thin border for them. I could have 4x6 photos, trim down slightly on a 4x6 piece of cardstock, and then mat that on the leaf. I'm just going to see a little border of the leaf around the edge. I have room down here for a photo. I could cut a photo for the vellum or leave it off. And I could also do journaling there if I didn't want to journal it here. And then you can use stickers to kind of like tie these together. Accent a little bit. I'm going to use a little bit of refill tape just to kind of mark where I think I want my photos. Easy to adjust later if I want to. I could also cut out the inside of that. So I have this plaid available later. I'm gonna do 3/4. This just gives me a little bit more grace in it. And then I do top and bottom. I'm just doing it to the edge of the housing. So it gives me this, which is just something, the plaid, to keep for another layout. And then I can put some mini tape around the edges. Put here, this here. I'm going to push those up here. A little bit of repo tape to hold them. Pretty confident, but it gives me a little bit of leeway. And then I have these to scatter. Vellum. Things are scattered when I was trying to do this. If I can find maybe a little sticker, like that, like, well, this looks like I've kind of covered it up with a sticker. Just gather a few leaves around there. So again, these circles we cut. I don't know what I was thinking. I just didn't pay attention. They were for one of the borders, and I'm not doing the borders. We're going to use them on this layout instead. Plenty of stickers too, like if you don't want to punch the gourds down here. So I'll wait to punch when I have scraps at the end. So this is project number 7. So this completes our first round. It's got a little bit of a doozy. We just did 8 pages. So we did 4 2-page layouts. For the second segment, we are going to work on our scraps, creating some additional layouts, and then we'll come back through and finish some final embellishment, maybe add in some borders or stickers in places that we can.